All right, guys. So this was the AMA today with Russ and the guys. I kind of started recording a little later. I didn't realize my OBS wasn't recording, so I missed, but just a few minutes. I only missed maybe 3 or 4 minutes, maybe one or two questions of stuff that was already kind of answered before. So let's just get right into it. It's a rough recording. Um, Hopefully it all comes across though. Enjoy.
Us not becoming wide enough of a game. So, and then it's just a really capacity on animation. It really does have to be a custom animation for each mech, and we really can't get away with sort of what BattleTech did, which all the mechs just kind of are on their particular hex square, and then have a kind of all have a similar stand-up animation. So this is something that is in a category of we still need to talk about this and see if it's something that we're going to be able to think about to include for day one. So I would put knockdowns and melee attacks in the same category. They're not things that I've totally given up on. It's just like I think we have to have the base game super dialed in and have a great 80+% type of product we think in our hands before we would go to those efforts on those areas for day one.
So I can take the next one here, Stone Falcons. Can we build relationships in game with other popular merc units, which evolves as the timeline progresses? Sorry, I just missed my scroll there. Example, Wolves, Dragoons, and Killhounds. So right now, the merc life really just tracks your relationships with the great houses and the contract providers. So you may see these mercenary factions units elsewhere. You may fight against them. But in terms of an overarching relationship or ongoing kind of theme of conflict with these units, not at the moment, no.
In the beta, with the co-op, yes, absolutely. In co-op play, will a player be able to have another PC have control of another lance? No, this, everything about MechWarrior 5 is designed around, the lance encounter. That's something that could grow in future updates, and I suppose there's maybe a small possibility that in the instant action manager, things could go beyond a lance, but certainly the single player experience is built around a lance. So I guess the safe answer is think of the game as a lance and you and your buddies all being in the same lance, with maybe, I think, whether it's post-release target or what, I think Instant Action Manager does have the chance to go beyond a lance, but not something that's planned for initial release. Imperius has got a follow-up question to this morning there, Alex. This is you build a mercenary unit. You don't really build an empire, Imperius. I mean, you are a mercenary unit, and you can. I'm not going to give you an exact cap on the number of like mechs and pilots you can own. I mean, we can take a stab at that and think, well, maybe you can have a dozen, maybe you can have 24 mechs and pilots, but ultimately you're going out in the form of a lance and building up a mercenary unit. So it's about taking your reputation from total noob, getting the worst missions on Earth. It's like your starter mech, you're going out and doing some very basic missions to earn C-bills, so on and so forth, earning reputation, earning negotiation points, paying your bills, working your way up, go to the market, eventually maybe getting a second small mech, or maybe selling your small mech and pulling your money to get a small medium. And any way you want to do it, and work your way around the inner sphere and work through this career and get to the point where you're, of course, working through your story missions the whole time. Get to an elite mercenary status where you can take out entire elite battle mech lance and win the game. So you can think of your empire really as being your dropship, your collection of mechs, your collection of pilots, your inventory of equipment, your reputation, and of course completing the main story arcs and so on and so forth.
And in terms of customization of the dropship, that was an early design. When we first started, working through this concept of the physical hangar, the physical dropship, and this kind of persistent hub. It's been pretty much cut since then, but customization of that area is something that every now and then does still come up. So we may look at that in the future, but for now there's no customization of the dropship itself.
Cheats and console commands. I think that is something we've really thought about that. I mean, we have an entire cheat menu. I kind of envision a world, since it's a single player game, where there's no real reason for us to not provide some sort of like shortcut, thing that you pass in and just unlock the cheat menu. So yeah, I don't see that as being something we're like against or anything. I mean, do whatever you want in your single player game. Yeah. I can talk a bit about the music. I guess certainly Sean, who you guys know, who composed the music for MechWarrior Online. All the stuff you've known in MechWarrior Online is composing the music for MechWarrior 5. Maybe he gets some more help. Maybe we involve some more people. That's not totally decided yet. But we're going for a Mercenaries theme soundtrack here, which to us and me and Sean, as we've talked, is really sort of a more of a heavy guitar, metal type of soundtrack. So it's definitely not like I guess like BattleTech's, which had obviously great music, but it suited it very well. More of a symphony sort of style stuff. And there'll be a lot of, if you saw in the demo, which is a very early version of it, but there's a lot of transitioning between just very gentle ambient style.
Seems like we're cutting up a little bit the connection, because we can't hear Russ at the moment.
Yeah, you're kind of dropping out a little bit too, actually.
Am I? Okay, let me try and quickly change the server location and see if that helps. Testing, is this better?
Might be. Russ, can you hear us? One second.
Sorry guys, one moment.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. Where did I cut off at? I was answering the question on how many mechs. And I don't know if you guys heard that at all.
No, I'm pretty sure you cut out in between the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Okay. Soundtrack answer was received though. Metal, Mercenaries, guitar riffs.
I think just it.
Okay. I was gonna say okay, I'll just repeat some. I got a few messages that maybe they didn't get all that. So very quickly, I'd say it's a combination of some ambient music at quieter moments, and then as you get into combat, there will be a dynamic music system that ramps up into more of the heavier guitar riff, Mercenaries theme music. So that's the way the music, that's the style of music. Sean, who's done the MWO music, is working on it. Maybe we'll get him some help too. And that's, I think, the best we can do. And I agree, the MechWarrior 2 music was great. We just have a little more, it's not just a straight soundtrack like it was back in the MechWarrior 2 days. You do have you have your ambient music, more similar to MechWarrior 2, I guess, and then you have the transition and ramp up into more of the heavier heavier metal stuff. How many mechs will have in beta? I believe there's no real reason for us to be limiting the mechs in the beta. You know, based on when the beta is happening, we'll be wanting to test everything. So it might be all of them, unless we come up with some reason that we need to hold some mechs back for marketing reasons or just that type of stuff. They'll probably all be in there. So it could mean hundreds and when you get to variants and such.
We may not have told them how many chassis we're looking at right now. Should we?
I believe I said that this morning. Is it 50 or 55 chassis?
Yeah, it's around there. 50, between 50 and 55.
You know, anywhere to 4 to 6 variants each. So, we're looking at 200 to 250 variants, let's say.
Oh, the Urban Mech is one of them.
How much are we giving away? Did we just say it was? It is one of them. It is, of course.
No to the landholds question.
Ixnay on that. You're moving around. You're being hired by people. You're not looking to put down roots. Although, in the story, we'll leave that secret. Okay. Virtual reality. As we've answered a few times at MechCon, I did this morning, is I see a world where virtual reality could happen for this game. And I think day one is possible, but I think for us to put our development time towards it, we'd have to see, I think, kind of a greater increase in adoption rates and demand. And I think our priority should be to make sure we get a dang good game launched. And then once that happens, this could be in the form of follow-up support. And it is quite, easy in Unreal, knock on wood. It really comes down to the performance of the game and making sure that you have enough frames per second to support it. And so I don't know. I kind of put this at a 50-50 thing for day one, but gets probably 75% or higher on not too far post-release. So I know those that have the VR headsets and would love to play this with VR. I think chances are pretty good.
So there's a question above
how long?
But co-op.
Whenever I skip one, it's because I meant
to. Oh, you. Well, I mean, we have an answer for that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and answer.
Well, so current co-op structure is such that when you join somebody else's session, you're joining their universe, and you are essentially, and Russ touched on this a little bit this morning with the pilot system, you are adopting one of their pilot personas, so you're accessing the stable of mechs that player has in their universe. When it comes to instant action, there'll be a lot more flexibility, obviously, in terms of everyone having access to whichever mechs. There's no real reason to restrict those in instant action. And we will be, exploring the ability for instant action, being able to pull in some of your own specific mechs. But at least for the main co-op campaign, it's up to the users, the hosts stable.
How long is the single player campaign? I feel like we'll have a really good answer for that soon. We'll leave that for a future AMA. I guess it's just really up to us to kind of figure out the sweet spot, because certainly the game could be exceptionally long overall when you're talking about the entire career, and really just tunes it to how many missions do we require per reputation level before the next story missions unlocked, etc. And it could be 50, 60, 80, 100 hours if we wanted it to, including all the generated missions in between the handcrafted story missions. So, and then of course you have the replayability of starting the game in all 5 different starting locations with 5 different starter mechs. So I think for now the simple answer is just to say it's a big game and the experience is going to be long, and we still need time on tuning the economy and the game itself to find the right spot. Don't want to make it just long for the sake of being long, but it's a big game, and I think you won't be left feeling like you finished MechWarrior 5 in like 8 hours or something like that, like some past games. Do mechs have quirks? Well, not in the sense like you're used to in MWO. A base variant chassis is a base variant chassis. There are manufacturers' weapons in the world, so those weapons come with specific flavor, which is essentially like having quirks on them. So you might choose medium lasers made by a particular manufacturer for reasons of range or something that you like. And we haven't ruled out the possibility of technicians being able to apply a chassis wide quirk to your mechs in certain situations. Right now I think I consider that a good idea, one we really like, but is on our nice to have list at the moment. Certainly the weapon manufacturers are quirk like, and possibly technicians providing chassis wide quirks.
Yeah, and the quirk system we do have for equipment is essentially for equipment in general as well. So weapons and any other pieces of heat sinks and jump jets. So it's more of an equipment based quirk system at the
when MechWarrior 5 is released, what will happen with MechWarrior Online? Well, nothing really. Meaning, like, nothing should change. It's completely up to the player base and those playing it. But there's no plans at Piranha Games to stop MechWarrior Online or anything like that. They both provide completely different things. Still, you cannot play PvP multiplayer in MechWarrior 5, and you can't play co-op or single player in MechWarrior Online. So understandably, people are wondering, thinking, well, if everyone's playing MechWarrior 5, who's going to be left in MechWarrior Online? And I guess we'll just have to see. I still feel like there's a lot of people that are going to be playing MechWarrior Online because it just provides something so specific. You just won't be able to get that anywhere else except in MechWarrior Online. So it'll continue, to answer your question.
Question about curveball missions. Missions where you're sent to patrol against a possible attack that never comes, ambushes, clients lying about the nature of the mission. Some of that, yeah. Won't
Just
go into
say yes
specifics.
and move on.
Yeah.
Yes. You say yes to Michael real quick there.
That is yes.
Streaming the beta. There's no promise yet, as the FAQ says. It's like we don't know yet, and here's why we don't know. There's one of the big things that we'll need to do around the game's release is provide review codes to the press and media, and that means a lot. They're going to be under embargo, of course, to not release those reviews until a particular point, just within, how that usually works, within a few days of the game's release or within a week or whatever. And obviously we can't be just streaming the whole game while they're embargoed. So I don't think it'll be an issue though, because the beta itself is not going to be giving away the whole game. It's not going to be giving away the whole story campaign. Like, we don't want to spoil it, So it'll almost certainly, I don't know this for sure, but I anticipate that the beta will be like the instant action manager screen with full co-op support, so people can set up their own mission scenarios with co-op or not co-op and AI and go out and play in the instant action manager 4-player co-op or with AI. And that's my anticipated kind of sense of what the beta will be, which means that it'll probably be fine to stream it. But this is something that still needs to be worked out between us and the PR firm and everything at the time. So be prepared for the possibility of having to sign NDA and to not stream it. But obviously our goal would be that people would be able to stream it, and influencers and everyone, and getting everyone all pumped up about the game. Because if everyone's loving that and thinking that's awesome, and they still haven't even played the single player campaign yet, obviously that'd be great. Let's move on to Zombies Blood. Well, I mean, the target audience is MechWarrior fans, but like I've said a few times before, this is definitely, there's going to be some things in MechWarrior 5 that are designed around capturing a much larger MechWarrior giant robot fan base. Some of those things would be the fact that there is a more of a tutorial in the beginning, and there's more of a ramp up. So the initial missions are very, very small, very simple, like miniature story missions, kind of pushing you through. But also things like a very complex, or not complex, a very robust third-person camera system, because there is no concerns, there is no worry about what am I trying to say here? Like PvP notions of competitive play or anything like that. So if someone's really great at third person, that's the way they really prefer to play it. Those sort of things. There's a number of things kind of in that category. Maybe even things that might auto center their torso if they're bumped into a wall too long, and just things that we don't need to worry about since we're not a PvP game. Anything that might help more people have a good experience and hopefully, really revitalize the larger audience of MechWarrior of days past. So I think that gives you a sense. It's certainly at its core, it's very MechWarrior, and it's certainly much, much deeper than any, large publisher would go with this game, but much more pure MechWarrior. But we're definitely going to have a few things like a robust third-person camera and a number of other helpful things to help newbies.
Gonna answer the next one.
Yeah, let me answer that one again. So,
yeah,
I was surprised at how many comments we got on that with the trailer and the MechCon demo, and some people kind of foresaw that. But yeah, we actually have it's already complete, like a pretty robust slow field system, we call it. So any destructible object in the game has a field around it as you enter it that will slow the mech down, and we can have it cause damage or do a number of things. And we just didn't really have time to tune it really well for the MechCon demo, so essentially it was just removed, and it was like just smashing everything. We thought, well, we're not going to have it totally tuned. Let's just go for fun of just like plowing through buildings and stuff. And honestly, it's really fun when you play it. But I guess watching the videos and stuff, it looks a little too buttery easy. So yeah, the easy answer is yes, there will be. A massive mech going through a tiny building might look like it's going through, like you saw in the video, like nothing. And then that same mech going through, a head-high building might slow you right down to half speed and perhaps even cause minor damage based on the type of building. A Locust is going to have a tough time going through some of those bigger buildings. So yes, all that's already developed too. Is not even a risk point. You'll probably start to see more of that in future trailers as we tune that. Full list of mechs. I'm not going to just release a full list of mechs. I think that's boring. So what we'll do is, weekly screenshots, and over the course of the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, you'll find out what all the mechs are. So I know it's less fun for you to go out theory crafting or whatever, but I think that's the way we want to handle it. Not really understanding Derek's question too much. Will we see any content regarding events before MechWarrior 5, such as a prequel? Not getting it. You got that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll interpret it at least, maybe. So there's nothing really like, playable in terms of the events prior to, and if it's a question regarding, future releases, like nothing to comment on at this time. You'll have some story elements that will be kind of doled out through the campaign that will give you some insight into events that occurred before the time in which you're playing, but it's really just focused on the time period that we're looking at.
How are you planning to help MechWarrior 5 and MWO grow together, strengthen each other? I don't know how to answer that question other than we can cross-market between the games. You've seen that with the pre-order. It's so directly linking to each other. The MechWarrior 5 website is talking all about the MWO content. The MWO website's talking about the pre-order. We'll continue to do as much of that stuff as we can together. But they won't be like linked together as far as like the accounts like linked in some way where they share the universe and like transferring of mechs and things like that. With CryEngine versus Unreal 4, it's just those sort of things aren't worth the development effort. It'd be better to focus on future updates, future content, and just expanding each product in the best way possible. To Revenant's question, is kind of similar. It's a totally different engine, MechWarrior 5 compared to MechWarrior 9. So, I mean, a lot's changed or improved. I would say, obviously, visuals, the destructibility system of the mechs. We should leave that for a future art AMA, but that's a big conversation in and of itself. There's like 33 different destructible levels between the 11 components, 22 different model swaps, something like that. It's intensely better. And then, of course, the entire destructible environment. MWO has really none. So the list is long, I think, but that's a great kind of art AMA stuff to go into better details, I think. Mech stable. Oh, how is our mech stable? Infinite. That's a good question. We have not decided on a limit yet. There's no real reason for us to limit it. I think it'll come down to the economy of the game. So if there's probably a design decision still to finalize there, if does a mech in, cold storage, like Battletech's, cost you nothing. I guess if it costs you nothing, then there really wouldn't be a reason to cap it. If there was some kind of upkeep cost, I think people would just find that there's just a limit. I kind of lean more towards the idea of like there should be some type of financial barrier that you have to sort of, you don't want to just have 100 mechs in cold storage. It doesn't seem very realistic that you could upkeep and keep all those costs and store all those mechs. But that's really from a front end perspective and from a game perspective, there's no real reason for us to have to limit it technically. I don't know, Alex, do you have anything to say on that one?
Not really. I mean, there is, like, just on the technical side of things, there is a sense of a technical cap on like the number of active mechs with all the full loadout information, just so we don't inflate the save file too crazy. But yeah, I think that's just the only addition I'll make.
Are there going to be elementals? Not at day one release. The priority is to get this game up to this 34-year career from the 3015 to 3049 and go through the great story and have dozens and dozens of gameplay and tons of replayability and all that. And obviously our hope is it's going to be pretty obvious what the first big major DLC pack should be for the game, and we hope we get to make it. But first we need this game to be successful. Is the need for MechWarrior 5 mechs influencing which IS mechs are being added to MWO? I would say it has at least a little bit. When we've talked about what mechs to do, there's no doubt that I've been sitting in the room saying, okay, but it makes a lot of sense just in capacity and for our small studio to make sure whatever mech we're making, if possible, can work in both games. And obviously that hasn't always been the case. We've still announced some, Clan 2C mechs and everything, and they're not going to be in the initial release of MechWarrior 5, but potentially in future DLC. So theoretically, hopefully we'll get to use all of them. But for initial MechWarrior 5 release, yeah, it's impacted our decisions a little bit. Not something that demanded certain decisions, but influenced. Startup animations, aren't they? Wouldn't that be similar to MWO, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, if he's referring to the mechs themselves, similar, more polish. Like if it's
the beep bops of the hand moving around and
beep boops. Yeah, we was actually talking about this today with the technical artist. We're looking into some things.
All right, I think we answered this next one yet. Omega James one. You answered that earlier. As to RHO there, Row, yeah, no, I mean, we're gonna. that's difficult for me to answer right now, but I mean, boy, it's just, we'll see, you know. I mean, but my initial reaction is positive. My initial reaction is like, yeah, of course, you know, if our time with you know, making new mech games is, you know, if it comes to an end or something, then it's like, okay, we probably would do that. If we were able to make more, then, you know, maybe we wouldn't. We'd hang on to it and, you know, release stuff officially before people got it. So, yeah, ear to the ground. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be the summertime before I have a better idea of that, probably, or even when after the game's released. That should give you some sense of my thought. Will we be able to keep playing after the story missions are done? We've talked about this. I would say we're not positive yet, but I think the last time we talked about this, Alex, we were kind of the mindset of like, yeah, there's no reason to not let people continue, but the game clock would probably stop. So maybe you'd continue on the 3049 time period and just kind of continue on at that top level for as long as you want, and then eventually you're gonna maybe just do a replay it again, because you have 5 different starting locations, and starting locations will have some impact because it'll change what your starting mech is. It'll change where you are when you start, so who you're fighting when you initially start, and what kind of mechs are on the market when you initially start. So, yep, I don't know for sure. It's quite possible we could allow people to continue on. There's no real reason for us to not do it. We could just freeze the clock and say, all right, carry on. And here's my caveat time, though. Just say we're doing our best in these AMAs, but some of these decisions could change as we get closer. You cannot have more than 4 mechs in your lance. You can own more than that. You can have mechs in storage and even in cold storage, and you might own 15, but you're going to take 4 out. Warhorns in Mech 5. No plans yet. Yeah, I guess let's leave it at that for now. I mean, right now, customization, there's full pattern support for your mech, but we haven't explored the notion of going into the cockpit yet. So I think that's something we still have to explore. I don't know if we're looking at post support of MechWarrior 5 or something. I don't know what the breakdown is for Canadian Falcon there, Alex. Of those 50 to 55 unique chassis, I don't know if it's fairly evenly distributed or what.
Yeah, offhand, I don't recall. It's the differences aren't too significant between them.
So MechLab question. We went to a lot about this morning, but we should go over it again. Custom weapon loadout. Yes and no. I mean, you do have a MechLab. You can customize your mech. You just can't customize them to the level of MWO. I mean, MWO is probably the most, it's not even probably, it's the most complex, mech lab there's ever been by a long shot. You can do anything in there essentially. But a lot of times, as people complain in MechWarrior Online, that a particular mech can kind of negate a million other chassis because of what you can do with the mech lab. So our rule of thumb with limiting the MechWarrior 5 mech lab was primarily to say we have an entire game built on this 34-year career, traveling the inner sphere, getting salvage, perhaps even getting chassis of salvage, and going to the free market everywhere you travel and looking for mechs to buy and purchase. And when you see a particular mech hit the market, a particular variant, it should be like, oh, wow, I haven't seen that yet. That's really cool. And when particular technologies come online, like ferrofibrous, and you see the JR7F variant for the first time with ferrofibrous, that should be cool. We don't want you to just go to the mech lab and put it on your regular Jenner. So take that as a general rule of thumb, but you can go in there and you can adjust your armor and adjust your number of heat sinks and decide you don't like that small laser, you don't use it, take it off, use it to add more armor, put more ammunition, and that sort of thing. Do variant, manufacture equipment loadouts for your weapons. If that, hopefully that answers your question. That's what I got for you. All right. I'm not sure whose idea it was on Discord. There kind of few people talking about it, but appreciate that. Will it be a full co-op campaign with shared everything? One player is lead and the other is hires, just co-op. I think we've answered this. I'll just quickly hit it again. It's a single player game primarily, right? So everyone's playing their own single player games, but to play as friends, you have a couple of options. You can just go to the instant action manager screen and like set up scenarios, and one person plays host and invite some friends in. And if you got one guy who wants to come play with you, you can just be the two of you plus two AI pilots or any combination, and just play missions like that. Or you can invite someone into your campaign and they can come in and play as one of your AI pilots. So that way, while they're playing with you and you're having fun, your AI pilot is continuing to skill up and get better, and you don't lose those hours of all of a sudden that pilot's behind where the other guys were. So that's the design currently. That's kind of the scope of what we're pushing for. I know there's lots of great follow-up questions of like, well, can my friend bring his mechs into my bay, and can my friend take rewards back with him? Those aspects are more stretch. The goal here really was let them come into your universe and play. You go into his universe and play, or just go into Instant Action Manager and play with each other. That's kind of the initial release scope of the co-op campaign. Exclusive mechs. Probably not. We're always trying to provide as much value and support for MechWarrior Online as we can as well. And so, like I said earlier, I think we've kind of our decisions on what mechs to make has kind of been like, well, what can we use in both? And so never say never, but all of our story elements we kind of know what kind of mechs they're using, and there's some hints in our trailer. There's some, Alpha Lance mechs being used by our, bad guys and in our story and stuff. So never say never, but I don't think so. I think we just answered that next one. Philosophical. Will MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries take anything from the older MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries game? Oh, geez. I mean, I think everything I've said about the whole game is essentially like a building and taking a step from MechWarrior 2. I mean, we're definitely standing on the shoulder of giants. MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, and all other MechWarrior games, including MechWarrior Online. It is a significant influence for us as well. So, taking lots from MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, I think. I know it's kind of a general answer, but I just think it's just so true. It really is building off of all those past games. And I think I answered about melee. It's not. I mean, we're not saying no yet, but melee, fall downs, the animation work and hit detection for a first-person shooter style game is infinitely more complex than, say, like the turn-based, Battletech, the custom animation work and such. So I think it's awesome. I'm not saying no. We need to make sure that everything else that was super dialed in and ready before we would jump on that. Perhaps that's a really great DLC too. So I guess we'll just leave it at that again. Ground vehicles. I think certainly the way that what we'll have for sure, as you saw in the MechCon demo, like there will be times where you get ground vehicles as part of your unit. Usually they're NPCs from the mission that are joining you and following you and becoming a part of what you're doing, and they're fighting for you and they're fighting the enemy. I think that's realistic for the initial release of the game. I don't think it's realistic that we have a whole area of the front end where you're buying and repairing and deploying vehicles as part of your unit. But I do think you'll have friendly vehicles and units that will be with you and fighting with you at times based on the mission. Alex, hurry, I'm getting tired. Take a couple.
Will we use the Comstar MRB? I mean, the contracts are being distributed through, the MRB network. It does, like, as a system, it doesn't play a significant role currently. It's more just a vector for delivering the contracts to the player. Any plans for co-op wave survival mode or just campaign missions? Not in that sense. There are maybe some mission types that have wave elements, so there's a wave component that missions will use, but not in like the sense of a horde mode or something like that. Just reading through some things here.
Yeah, I'll do the lights one. I think we're not going to be as scared of this as we were in MWO, like meaning I think it's fair to say that MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries will be a little more of a traditional power creep type mentality as you get more and more into elite and take the bigger missions, that you do have just more and more and more heavier in assault missions or heavier in assault mechs. I think where lights come into play more in MechWarrior 5 will primarily be on mission type. So maybe there will be moments when you are at super elite status near the end of the game, but there's a mission type that is, nighttime scouting, and you still take out, Raven 3Ls and things like that, but it's just a very hard, scout mission. So that's the way I see that. But I do think there's definitely a little more of that classic power creep mentality to MechWarrior 5 as you progress to a degree. Yeah. Link's Revenge, basically asking if it'd be PvP in a way, and I agree it could be fun, but we have MWO, and I would just say never say never. There's a natural evolution of I know all people always talk about MWO2 and stuff like that, and I don't have anything to announce about that today, but you could, and everyone keeps saying, when's MWO go to Unreal? So I guess I'll just say that you never know where the evolution will take us, but obviously the evolution of PvP, if we're talking about stuff beyond MWO, it's quite logical to think that it would build upon the work that we're doing in this new engine. So leave it that for now. There won't be any PvP certainly out the gate in MechWarrior 5. Everyone can go to MechWarrior Online for that, and I'm sure the modders will be coming up some things too, though.
And so career mode, like the post story, I assume you mean HBS Battletech. So to be honest, I've actually been a little heads down on developing Mech 5, so I haven't had the chance to play the update to HBS's Battletech. From what I know, not in that sense. Like, we will be, accounting for what does the end game look like, what does the post game look like. But in terms of a specific mode or a structured system, right now it's more just using the standard mercenary life metagames metagame systems that already exist in Mech 5.
Yeah, I need to learn more about that too, because I was under the impression that their career mode was just kind of more closely what MechWarrior 5 is going to be, but maybe there's more to it. We don't have an answer for you at the moment on Solaris games. Yep, there are biomes in vacuums. There's moon environments and stuff like that already. Clan Max is, I'm just going to say yes, eventually. I think I answered in VR already. I would say if not on initial release, it would be soon after post-release. I think we answered PvP. I think that's a natural progression of the technology and the framework we're building, but we just don't know yet. DFA, I think, really falls into that category of, fall downs and melee that we've talked about a few times. Soundtrack, no, I'm not going to, try to talk to Activision to see if I can't get the rights to the MechWarrior 2 mercs. I know how difficult that conversation is going to be. It's basically impossible. So you guys will just have to do your own thing in the mod side, and you guys can do it in get away with it. We can't, essentially. I think we've answered the Mech Lab one pretty heavily. MW2, we kind of answered that too. It's like, this. Yeah, I'm not going to jump into that right now. We could do that in future AMA. It's really, it's quite awesome. Obviously, it's quite promising. You basically recreated the combat, elements and everything in Unreal 4. You've got all the back-end infrastructure, which is really platform agnostic, but then you just have, significant work still to do, and the specific hit detection and networking. So there'll still be a ton of work, but like I say, it is a natural progression of the technology. It's just not something we're talking about right now.
There are no underwater levels currently.
Yeah, again, staying focused on shipping the initial level, and that just opens up a whole new set of work to do that I don't think is worth the effort, at least not until you've mastered the main game. For now, the mech pilot, there's some stuff that's outside of the Leopard according to the story missions at the beginning of the game and such. So yes, but mostly no to your question. It's mostly the Leopard. I think we've answered that in the co-op thing. I think we're still considering some kind of accumulated progression / transfer back to their world, but it's just a consideration at the moment. It'd be nice, but at the same time, we're not looking to create like a deep, server infrastructure here or anything like that. And also don't want to ruin their single player experience if they play with their friend for 12 hours and go back and then jump forward and miss a third of the game anyhow on their storyline. So mostly you're going into other people's campaigns, or they're playing in yours, or you're playing an instant action manager with each other. Crouching. That's news to me. If I could ever crouch in MechWarrior 1, 2, 3, 4, I didn't know it. At least I don't remember. Quadrupeds. Pretty cool thought to see something in I think it has more chance in MechWarrior 5. I'll put it that way. We mentioned at MechCon that our super pirate Corsair mech is going to have a part in the storyline as someone you need to deal with, and that's I could see a quadruped kind of fitting in a similar way. No promises at the moment, but I like your idea. Yeah, Spectre. There is collision. Obviously, there's you're colliding with buildings. You've seen the demo. There's essentially nothing you can't smash and walk through and run through, or even the large, huge buildings can be pretty much stripped away. And yes, when you stomp on a vehicle, you are taking damage. So that's going to kind of scale with the size of mech you're in and stuff. So yeah, there is, and there's other kind of small destructibles that are like, gas containers that you hit, and those blow up and you actually take damage. So yes, absolutely. The game is going to be designed for 4K. So pretty sure the answer to your question is you shouldn't look at MechWarrior Online in any way as thinking about, that things are going to have a problem with scaling. Everything is to be designed to scale and work properly into 4K monitors. So the answer is you should be set. I think we answered that next one. There's some concerns around complexity for new players. That's going to be better. Tutorial, easy starting missions, good third-person cameras, co-op play with friends that are fighting PvE. I hope so. Lagging does work like MWO at the moment, but I still think you can kill by dismemberment. I'm not sure. Those aren't mutually exclusive things, are they? You just can blow off this arm, that torso, that leg, chip away at the whole mech and turn it into a pogo stick. We did flirt with the notion of making the mech not die until both legs are destroyed. We had it like that for a bit, kind of chickened out, went back to sorry, does take two legs to destroy the mech. What I meant to say is the mech did not destroy with two legs destroyed. Yeah, so I'm starting to get tired. Both legs destroyed did not cause the mech to die. It was basically just slowed down even further. So it was just kind of barely limping around and spinning in circles and fighting. And we played around with that. I kind of liked it. Others didn't. So we kind of chickened out, went back to a mech is destroyed on both legs missing.
Yeah, that almost made it in for the MechCon demo.
We'll see. We'll take some opinions, keep playing with it, but it doesn't seem like it's going to make it. I mean, eject really doesn't have a purpose in the game. The game is really designed around your lance mates and AI pilots can be destroyed and die and everything, but not you. The mission is going to just like carry on with your AI lance mates finishing the mission without you. Your mech can't be destroyed. You need to stay upright. So no real need to eject. I think we answered death from above, really. Just putting that into, although I guess it's a little different than, knockdowns and such. Certainly just applying damage on does that work currently, Alex?
Not the moment, no. But there is definitely a clear distinction between, applying damage on collision and extending that to things like falling on a mech. That's more achievable, I think, for us in the time frame. But with with a full death from above mechanic, the mech that you're crushing behaves in a way you might want it to. That's a little more complex.
I think it could work pretty well. You wouldn't, even if the mech that you totally landed on wouldn't fall to the ground with the full custom like fall down animations, but your capsules, you might smash it right on top of its shoulder or head, and then there might be some kind of capsule sliding down to the ground while it takes significant damage. If it dies, and of course it's going to fall over and die, but there is something there we can play with. We'll see. Salvage. I don't remember Mech 2 Mercs well enough. I talked about this morning, but a lot of these design ideas we've had for years, and it turns out in the end it's fairly similar to BattleTech's. I'm going to quickly say, because we've only got a couple minutes left, but you have negotiation points that you earn through doing missions. You spend those negotiation points to improve your position in getting perhaps more salvage or better salvage or a number of various things. And sometimes then you'll choose that salvage, that you get. And you'll be choosing from a pool, like a number out of a pool. So there is a lot of similarity to BattleTech, but I don't see us necessarily doing like the 1/3 chassis type thing. You probably will just, like loot an entire chassis, but that won't be gameable. You're not just going to be going out and like headshotting everything and then seeing all these chassis on the loot table. You're going to be negotiating with your contract on how much salvage you can get. And then to potentially take significant amount of negotiation points to make chassis available to be chosen, and choosing a chassis might take up significant amounts of the salvage. So there'll be limits, and certainly like looting an entire like chassis from the battlefield is going to be something that's going to be difficult, or maybe even rare or impossible in the lower level reputation ranks. But as you get more and more elite and more chances and opportunity for that kind of thing to happen, so I think it's kind of like BattleTech, mixed with a few different ideas. We kind of answered the cockpit items. No cockpit items yet at the moment. No real reason we can't. It's just, it's not really focus. Because I answered this morning, but at this moment, there's no microtransactions. Not that you'd have to microtransaction cockpit items. You could just have them, but full pattern support initially, and we haven't really kind of reached inside the cockpit at this point for what we might. Yeah, I mean, person inviting the others into their game, I believe, is the host. So there's a few things we can still tweak on that, but I think the host will be inviting players into their match. I would say the MechWarrior information warfare type stuff is going to be very similar similar to MechWarrior 2, like managing radar being MechWarrior 5. So I don't really remember what you mean by MechWarrior 2. I would say it's fairly similar to MechWarrior Online in that, if your AI teammates have a line of sight on someone, that will give you the target information so that you can lob your LMs in, and etc. It has more of a deeper system in place like that compared to the older games. And then we did customization.
I like the question about tying in Far Country.
I think I missed that one. Where is it?
Just in the little further below. Any plans for Far Country tie-in missions? Yeah, the alien races play a significant role in this game. No, they don't. No, there's no Far Country tie-in. Yeah.
Did they actually have an alien tie-in in MechWarrior?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm not going to go into it now, but you should.
All right. No,
it's storied history.
No lamb mechs. No, we'd have to be creating totally different environments to support that. Okay, one or two more. I think Duke Pilot. Obviously, you're doing missions for the Inner Sphere. So they're kind of. I think the answer to Hayden is yes. I mean, you're primarily. I think you're going to be fighting for like the main great houses. I'm not really sure if we're going to be. Although there'll be moments in story missions and whatnot where you're fighting for, Draconis combined, and then maybe, there's a particular house unit on the other side. So I think the answer is yes to that, but primarily think of it as fighting for the great house themselves.
Yeah, a couple there. Like it almost. So, a question about numbering at MechWarrior 5 and whether or not we would just consider a reboot and call it MechWarrior. That would almost feel wrong. It would feel a little inappropriate. I think for me personally.
Yeah. The 2009 MechWarrior, a lot of people started calling it MechWarrior 5, but that's kind of what we're doing. We just called it MechWarrior, and it was kind of like a reboot. So, I think. For a few reasons. One, coming off of MechWarrior Online and being in this position where we had like 1,000 mech variants and it just was so kind of obvious that we would be so well suited to creating a Mercenaries edition because we had such an advantage that the past MechWarrior games didn't have, that we could flood the markets of the Inner Sphere with actually, lots of unique content. Plus, think of MechWarrior Online again. We've got all the faction skins for all the various factions of the Inner Sphere. We've got all the patterns that you put on the mechs. We've got all the weapon models, the chassis, and we could really flood the market and create this feeling that people, I know, like me, and knowing playing the past games, longed for. It's like, if I think back to playing, even MechWarrior 4 Mercs, let's say, it's very. I like the game, but it was very linear, and you just kind of who where you were, and you were fighting very little choice, like maybe the ordering of 3 or 4 missions before you move on. And this is, I kind of always felt like MechWarrior 1 actually had more freedom in so many ways. You could travel around to various places and fight for whomever. So in some ways, it is a reboot in a sense, because I kind of view MechWarrior 1 as being the original Mercenaries game. It wasn't called that; it was just MechWarrior, but I think it's kind of the original Mercenaries game. Then you had MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries and MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries. In some ways, I view this kind of as a reboot. It's almost like MechWarrior 1 meets, Unreal 4 2019, and what that would look like. So it gives you an answer. But I think that's all we can do today. I am so tired, and it's 7, and there's going to be so many more of these guys. Hopefully, we still have things to talk about in a while. So we're going to separate out in the future. We'll do art ones, we'll do modding ones, we'll do mission ones. And there's so many more opportunities. We're going to try to do 2 a month, and there's like almost 8 months left, so there could be up to 15 more of these things. So maybe we'll stop once we get to beta or something if there's no point to it. But certainly there's a bunch more. And if we didn't get to your question, Sorry, but thanks for hanging out. I hope you got some good information, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, guys. We'll let you know in the announcements next time we schedule another AMA. So just keep an eye on this Discord, and we'll most likely also announce it on the social medias. Thanks for being here.
All right. Good night, everyone.